Welcome to Golden Goal TV and the FPL show. It's a weird one. It's a late edition, and the second reason is I'm actually hosting it, which I don't usually do. But George isn't with us today, so it's just me, and it's just me and you, Matt. How's it going?
Good, mate. That's good. Yeah, all good. All good, my end. What about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Fairly busy, fairly busy. Been at a conference earlier, so yes, it's mad one at the moment. But we'll talk FPL then. A
So
little bit
switching gears, yeah.
yeah,
Switching gears.
from tech to FPL to everything else in between. Now it's been a week in FPL where quite a few people had what can only be described as a shocker. So let's talk first. Did your team do in FPL?
To be honest, mate, I mean, obviously when it started on Saturday, I was fairly happy with the four players that played. Um I was I had Johnston got a 9 pointer. Gay he got five and Boomo got five, so I was happy there. I was hoping Alvarez would have been involved in the City route, but that didn't happen. Um Everything went through Doku. And then Sunday came and Monday, and the rest of it went in the mud. But it didn't seem to bother me too much because I still got a green arrow, got 34 points, and at the moment I am on 60k in the world. So very happy with that. What about yourself?
I got a glorious 27 points for the entire week. It's been an interesting one where my entire front three didn't do well. Um, Neither my midfield. I think my biggest asset probably was Kieran Trippier for Newcastle, even though that game was loaded with controversy. But other than that, it was a shocker. I mean, Haaland and Alvarez didn't do anything. Doku was clearly the player to have from Man City. Um, I mean, I've not had the worst week. Granted, I did see an article from the Premier League app that someone apparently out there, and I'd like to see how they must have had a mixture of Bournemouth and Tottenham defenders because someone out there got 1 point this week.
I saw that same article. Yes, yeah, and apparently they took an 8 point hit as well,
I mean,
which led them to get the point.
that is always it's just yeah. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anyone having 1 point. Quite a miracle, quite an achievement. And I've had some bad weeks, but it makes me feel better that even my bad weeks were not as bad as this one. But yeah,
Yeah,
not fantastic. But I think it's one of these freak weeks where the players you'd usually think would do well, unfortunately, have not. So
could have been a lot better for you though, mate, couldn't it? Because you had your transfer in last week, and he was sat on your bench, Cole Palmer,
yes,
12 pointer.
it was that kind of. Not only that, I had Cole Palmer on the bench. I also had Andre Onana on the bench, who got a clean sheet. So there was 18 points sitting on my bench. It's one of these moments, and because I wasn't sure between Madison and Palmer as to who would get more points, mainly because I didn't think the Spurs Chelsea game will go the way it did. I mean, I don't think anyone else did. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but I think Cole Palmer will be coming off of the bench this week, especially with Madison's injury potential.
It was a very chaotic game. I mean, you'd be pleased being a Chelsea fan, but yeah, I'm sure you were kind of rubbing your hands together there with the result. But if you look at it from a Tottenham point of view, any assets there, such as Romero, Adogi. So Romero got his straight red. He's out for 3 matches. Adogi misses one with his two yellows and then got the red. And then there's Mickey van der Ven. He got a hamstring injury and apparently he's out for 3 to 4 months for that one. So all three players, I would say, are a sell. Time to get them out of your squads if anybody's got them.
Yeah, I think it has to be a sale because you don't know how long they'll be out for, and Van der Ven, yeah, that's a bad injury. So yeah, that game has certainly given a lot of FPL managers a headache, especially the ones who have heavily invested in Tottenham players. I mean, Udogi was on my bench, so it's not the end of the world. It's not a priority to replace. So the real replacement for me really only is going to be probably Madison, because that's the area I get probably the most points in. So replacing him is fairly applicable.
Hmm. So who
Um,
would you switch to? Any thoughts at the moment?
I will let you know in the next feature, because I need to actually have a look at my options, and I haven't done that yet. But I'll
Yeah,
do that.
spoilers.
You're mentioning yours now. We do have George's contributions that he's recorded for us. Um, Unfortunately, due to technical issues, I am not actually able to currently access them, which is lovely. Technology is wonderful when it works, people. So, if we can access them at some point during the show, we will play you George's contribution. So, we've talked about how our teams have done. Um, Next, though, before we go to our plans for next week, we're going to go into a little debate. So, you've asked me this question off the groups, and I thought it would be quite interesting to talk about this because, on one hand, it's a fairly simple question: do you load up in defense or do you load up in attack in fantasy? And you know, everyone is going to have a different opinion on this, most likely, but I think a lot of them can be quite similar, where you can predict where people will go. So I'm going to ask you this: load up in defense or in attack? What would you say?
This is why I put the question to you on Saturday, purely because I think for me, the option is go defence. And I'll tell you why. So, because for me, it's Newcastle at Bournemouth. Fair enough, they're away. But you got the options there of Trippier, Lascelles. Some people probably have Share in their team as well. You've got Arsenal with Saliba, White, Gabriel, Zinchenko. They're at home to Burnley. Liverpool at home to Brentford. So you've got Simicast is probably the only affordable defender for Liverpool, unless anybody's taken Haaland out and put Trent in. There is also Aston Villa at home. So they've got Fulham, so anyone with cash, Luca Dina, any of two centre backs, Torres, Consa, or even, here's a shocker. So Man United, they're an option. You could have Maguire, something George and I have spoken about as well. Last week I put them all in the bin, and actually they won. And quite controversially, they should have had a goal in the beginning as well through McTominay. So yeah, for me, I think the options, and obviously the one I've missed out as well is Palace. And I think Palace are at home to Everton. So again, you could pick any one of their defence. Probably Addison's gone up now, I think, to 5.1. You could have Gay, Mitchell, even the keeper, Johnston, who I brought into mine. So there's so many options in defence, and I think this week is probably a good chance of clean sheets. What about yourself? What are you thinking?
See, I found that when you mentioned it quite interesting because, to me, when you're thinking of loading up in defense, I think it's a big risk because clean sheets are a tricky thing to come by in fantasy. I found in the last few seasons, clean sheets are a lot harder to come by. Not only just this season, but last season I think it was a certain issue where, okay, certain defenders would get you more clean sheets than others, but I do think defensively you're risking a lot. It's like, for me, I always have a rule that I will never pick a captain in defense, even though sometimes it might pay off. It's too much of a gamble. When, to me, I was always under the impression, and it's something that I always kind of saw quite a lot of evidence to, is that in attack, so midfield and forwards, you will most often than not get the most points. So, in my theory, if you it's kind of like betting, really, where you can take a gamble and load up in defense, and if it works for you, then you're laughing. That game week that this works for you, you're laughing basically to the higher rankings. But I think in attack you've got more of a chance of getting more guaranteed points, whereas in defense it's a lot more of a gamble. By all means, it could be a successful one, but I think you are risking a lot more. To me, loading up in attack is definitely, to me, it's the way forward now. Although due to technical issues, I can't access George's contributions. He has also said that what he would say is to load up in attack. Also, but it's an interesting debate. It's one of these things where you can probably make a case for both. And if you're watching this, drop us a comment. Where would you load up? Would you load up in defense or would it be attack for you? Because it's a debate where I feel the attack might win, but I have to say, I think defense is a gamble.
I think similarly, though, the point can be spun. You can kind of spin the other head of the coin, really, in the sense of obviously I've listed a few players there from each team who have the good fixtures. So if you've got those attacking players in your team, that works as well. So I'm instantly thinking Villa, Diaby, Watkins. Obviously, they're at home to Fulham, like I said. So I think the Palace Everton match has probably got a 0-0 written all over it, unless Eze starts and he seems to make them tick. And I'm struggling to think Man United probably get 1-2-0 against Luton, probably 1-0, but then I won't talk too much about that Luton team. Um, and, yeah, Arsenal, I can just see them. They'll probably spank Burnley, and there are options. It's just who you pick, and if you've already got these players in your team, I think the Man City Chelsea game would be a bit tricky. I can't see that being. I don't know what the score would be there. So there's options.
We're in the Chelsea game.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, the Man City Chelsea game. Who do you go with there? If you've already got them in your team,
I'm gonna be.
okay, you stick with who you've got, but it's who
I,
to pick.
I think that game is gonna. Is gonna. I don't think it's gonna be a high-scoring game. Now I say this, it probably will be a schooling for us. But I, I have. It's a tricky one. I can't really. Yeah, I'm not actually sure. It's a very good question. Um, I don't know if I'd pick Man City players at this point. Um, Not for this game week at least, anyway, because if Chelsea play an improved style like we have been playing, then you do wonder whether either side will score much. But that was kind of my reasoning for not putting, let's say, Palmer and Madison in the same midfield, thinking that that game is not going to be high scoring. You know, where I can see Man City, let's say, winning 3-1, but depends who scores these goals. It's one of these. Yeah, it's a tricky one, really. It's a tricky one what to advise.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of attacking options as well, I think obviously Jeremy Doku, who he got 22 points this past weekend, a goal and 4 assists. I don't see him playing against Chelsea because Pep's already come out and said the more difficult, easy for me to say, put my words in, right, or words out. The more difficult games would be Jack Grealish. The more easier games, he'd let Doku kind of run at the defences. So I don't think the next probably 4 games that are more tricky for City is probably more Grealish games. After that, probably switches to Doku.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but it's a good debate. So there we go. There was my Alexa thinking I called her name. So yeah, it's an interesting topic. Let us know in the comments, what would you do? Would you load up in defense? Would you load up in attack based on the fixtures, or even just in general? So Matt, let's
Mm.
talk about recommendations then. So we're gonna go for goalkeepers first. What goalkeepers what's your goalkeeper pick for this
So
week?
for me, the goalkeeper, I'm still sticking with the goalkeeper I had last week. I just think the fixtures are still good for Palace. They've got a good run until I think it's game week 15. So I'd still have to go with Sam Johnston. I think he is still the goalkeeper to pick. He's gone up zero point 0.1 now, so he's 4.6. Other than that, it's just the fixtures. You don't need to change him till then. And then obviously it's probably a time to you either choose whether to get off him and go for maybe jumping the gun here, but you either go in the future then go off him to go to a Flecken or a Sanchez would be one of those two options for me because they stay in the same price bracket. Other than that, I can't really think of any other options. You could pick Raya, obviously, because he's got Burnley. Um, yeah, and then other than that, it's because Arsenal's fixtures long term are good, so you could keep him in goal. Um, those would be the two for me, Johnston or Raya. What about yourself? What are you thinking?
I was gonna suggest David Raya myself, with Arsenal having well, over the next good few weeks, teams like Burnley, teams like Luton, and Arsenal in general don't really concede much. Yes, they've conceded against Newcastle, but I think it's fairly obvious that us and the rest of the world probably thinks that goal shouldn't have stood. So all in all, I think having David Raya in your team is not a bad shout. Palace is not a bad shout too, although I do think Everton might score against them, even if they might not win. For example, I can kind of see Palace winning 2-1, let's say, or even it being a 1-1 draw, because Everton just never know which Everton turns up. You know, they drew with Brighton last week, where a lot of people would have thought that Brighton probably wins. So Palace is possible. It's likely. They do have Luton coming up on the 25th of November. So that's, you would probably, well, I say you'd expect a clean sheet, bearing in mind what happened on Sunday, where your lot let us down, us Bedford faithful. Come on, what's
I was
disappointed?
going to skip over that game. Yeah. I was so
Disappointed.
pleased for Luis Diaz, though, to score the
Oh,
equaliser. So,
absolutely. And obviously, there was the wonderful news earlier that his father has now been released. So
absolutely. Yep.
it's fantastic news for Luis Diaz outside of football. I think it is excellent news. So we're very happy for Luis Diaz there. But yeah, David Raya would be my choice, definitely. Let's go to defenders. Who's your pick?
Again, I'm kind of sticking with the theme of Palace and Arsenal. I find it hard to go against the fixtures. So the fixture run again, as I said, for defenders would be a case of picking Joachim Anderson, Mark Gay, Tyrant Mitchell. But then again, you switch to Arsenal and you could have William Saliba, Alexander Zinchenko, even Ben White, who's a little bit more expensive. The only one that I'm really hoping does start is obviously Gabriel, because he tends to be the one where he's now being dropped or being rested. Apparently, he's being rested in the one where he was dropped against Sheffield United, was more tactical, giving him a rest because he played for Brazil. I'm hoping that he starts against Burnley because he's in my team. So those would be the options for me to kind of suggest to go to because they're all affordable within reason. What do you think, mate? What do you think?
Well, I was just again due to technical issues checking out listening to George's recommendations while I tried to quietly plug my laptop on charge because I'm actually about to go. George also recommended Sam Johnston, so looks like he has faith in that one. Or for fixtures in a couple of weeks, and this is be interesting. More future thinking. What would your thoughts be on Leno?
Yeah, he's mentioned Leno to me, and I think he's got an eye on him in terms of coming down in price. So he says, at the moment the Fulham fixtures aren't great, but if they come down in price in terms of Leno, he's 4.7 now. I think the best option for him is he'll drop to 4.6, and that'll be it. I can't see him dropping back down to 4.5 because they'd have to go on a shocking run of fixtures and just lose, I think, and I can't see that happening. But 4.6 is an option. And the bonus with Leno is he gets all the saves, so he gets save points. So it's a good shout. Okay, mate. The one thing I was going to say as well, just while you're you're probably trying to check the files for George's ideas or tips,
God,
his
I hope
suggestions.
so.
The one thing I was going to say as well is the one thing I don't like to do, as you were saying previously, is unless you're going to wild card, then it's an option. But I don't really like doing 1 week punts on players. I like to go with a player who's checking out the fixtures. So probably 4 to 6 game weeks are good, and then I'll put him in my team. If he's only got a good 1 week, such as the one that's popping out to me at the moment is Harry Maguire. Can't believe I've said that.
So,
But
so,
Maguire,
sorry.
he would be the one to put in for me, Maguire. If because you've obviously got Luton, then they've got Everton, so he would be an option.
Yes, I can see that. Although at the moment, Man United are as reliable as the weather forecasts. So,
I was trying to be a little bit. I was trying to even it out. Last week I put them all in the bin, so I was like, okay, let's just
I mean,
take a bit of bias out of there.
it provide quite a dull game yet last week. Now, I'm going to take you through some of George's picks, although I can't play them. I have noted them. So he put Gabriel. He said Gabriel could be a recommendation, but another one. And with Matty Cash being a doubt, an injury doubt. Um, although speaking of injury doubts, Madison's doubt is only 75% chance of play, so I'm not sure how. I'm surprised he says there's 75% chance of play, bearing in mind. But anyway, that side note to the side. What's your thoughts on picking Luca Digne?
He's an option. He's played fantastic so far this season. Um, so yeah, he's an option, but that is the segue that I was just on really. So for me, he's a short-term punt because Alex Moreno's back in the squad. So he's back in training. He was in the Villa squad last weekend that played Forest. He was in the squad again tonight. Um, Matty Cash I think he'll play at the weekend because his yellow ticker has now gone, where he was on the bench for Villa tonight. I don't know if he come on in the second half, but he was on the bench. So yeah, he's a shout, Dina, but because he's played fantastic, so he's always an option.
Okay, so let's go to midfielders then. Who's your midfielder pick?
See, George and I were talking about this one last night, and then leading up to the show, would be Saka. He's got to be the main man. He makes Arsenal tick against Burnley. There's goals, assists. Saka's got to be involved in that. And obviously, he came off last night. He's got a yellow warning as well. So it just says knock, 75% chance of playing. I think he will start because he starts majority of the games anyway. So he is the only one for me, although Martinelli looked fantastic last night. So he could be an option. And again, sticking with Arsenal, so George would love this. He'd be all over it because you could have Declan Rice. Now, he's a cheaper option. He plays a little bit more forward for Arsenal at the moment. Or Trossard. Again, short term punt. But Nketiah's got a yellow warning as well. So he's someone I was looking at till obviously getting flagged. So Trossard played last night. He scored. He could be an option, and he's on as a midfield too. So any of those four could be a good pick, I think.
It's always the tricky one with these kind of knocks and the little flags next to them players because you never. It's so unreliable these days, I find, especially when it says 75% chance of play. They could easily just start the game and you'd be none the wiser. Um, so I would go with Bukayo Saka as well. And yep, you'll be surprised to hear George has back to Bukayo Saka too. But also Martinelli, I think both of them. I mean, yes, Arsenal have Burnley, so bearing in mind what Burnley are like at the moment, I think possibly, and like I said, I don't recommend this often, but for a short term solution, having two Arsenal midfielders who are particularly known for scoring and assisting, so having Saka and Martinelli both in your team for 1 week, if you've got both players potentially, but one's on the bench, let's say, I think that might be quite a good option. So, well, because I've got Saka already, I'm going to say Martinelli as my pick for the midfield because I think it'd be quite an interesting one. Now, we're good forwards, and I don't think anyone will guess George's recommendation for this, but I'm going to start with you. Your striker pick.
So my striker pick has again chatting to George throughout the week, and watching different guys on YouTube, different content creators. So I was very much leaning towards Nketiah. I think he could, obviously the Sheffield United game, I think he could get two easily against Burnley. Now he's a doubt for playing. So I'm very much a doubt in terms of putting him in my team. Um, so striker picks this week are very, for me, I've just got to go with, again, he came off injured. Callum Wilson was going to be an option. So I think I've got to go with the one that's in my team. I think he didn't have a great game last week, but I've got to go with Ollie Watkins. He's at home against Fulham. He's the option. He plays for Villa all the time. He's your main man this week.
Yeah, I think he's consistent, and he's one of the players I think you can't really rule out. Yeah, Callum Wilson's injury or state of it is frustrating. I'm not sure really how likely he is to play because he's in my team. I need to take a look at that because it's either that I've got or Man City's or Man City's Haaland and Alvarez. So that's a tricky one. I'd say Eddie Nketiah could be a good risk, possibly, depending if he plays. Though it's a concern. But I'm gonna go to George's pick because I think it's quite exciting. Well, exciting and different. I don't know if I'd pick him myself, but apparently, as a little gamble, as a little differential, let's say. What's your thought on Cameron Archer for Sheffield United?
Yeah, I didn't know about this until George told me this morning. He said about Cameron Archer. So we've been talking about possible routes into getting Haaland back into the team. Um, I think either one of us is really seriously thinking about it yet. It's an option purely for that Luton game, and then City have got the double game week, looking like it's going to be confirmed for game week 20. So yeah, Cameron Archer for a very much again a short term punt is an option because then they've got Bournemouth this week. Not sure if they're home or away, but then the following week after the international break, Sheffield United go to Burnley. Then after that, the fixtures go bad again for Sheffield United. So again, a very short term punt for over 2 weeks, but it's the type of player that could sit on your bench and just tick along. But then again, he scored a great goal last week, got 9 points. So yeah, definitely worth a shout. But just going back to the Nketiah option, for me, kind of falls into that short term punt because then again, he'd probably have Burnley, Brentford, and then Jesus could be back. There's obviously a lot of talk that Nketiah was going to possibly get about 4 to 5 games. So there's Wolves, there's Luton, but then Jesus is back in the fold. I think after the international break. So yeah, going back to the Archer, good shout, short term shout, but yeah, could be one that just sits on the bench after the Burnley game as well. What are your thoughts for a striker, mate? What are you thinking?
Jota. Cameron Archer's not a bad one for the two games. Another one because Everton, even if they play teams where they only score one goal, that's still a guaranteed potential goal. Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
Again, good option. Good option. Unfortunately for Everton, he's the type of guy you'd have to, for me, he's the type of guy you'd have to leave in your team and just hope that, because every team gets a chance.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter how good or bad you are, every team gets a chance. So
And
he's the type of guy that you'd have to leave in and then hope that he gets the chance and scores like he did against West Ham. So where you got the winner. So yeah, good shout. Good option.
so, any. Let's now go to our teams. What's your team like? Have you made any changes? Are you still working on it? What's your plans for the
To be
week?
honest, mate, yes, I am. I'm still working on it because normally by this point when we come on do the show, my team is very much set. Um, I picked it in terms of this coming game week already. And so my team at the moment stands with Johnston in goal. I have a 3-4-3 at the moment. So I've gone with Trippier, Gabriel, and Simicas with a midfield four of Salah, Saka, Diaby, and Son. And then my front three are Alvarez, Nunes, and Watkins, with a bench of Areola and Bumo. I'm trying to think who the other guy is on my bench. Cash and Gay. There you go. I forgot about Matty Cash. He's in the bank. So for me, that's how it stands at the moment with Mo as captain. And then I've got Saka as vice captain. So again, chatting to George, Saka could be an option for captain. I think he'll play, so I think that's not too much of a risk. But in terms of my team, I was thinking, as I said, 3-4-3. Now I'm thinking of switching it up to going to 4-4-2 this week. So that would be bringing Gay in and Cash, dropping Simicast to the bench, and also dropping Alvarez to the bench, which is a gamble. I've got one free transfer at the moment. Now, talking of Haaland, the routes to get him back in, I'd have to use the free transfers, probably looking at about 3 or 4 free transfers to bring Haaland back in. Now, I'm very wary about doing that because if it damages the squad a lot, do I want to really do that? But if I do, I've got to start using those free transfers this coming week. And that would be bringing in maybe Jamal Lascelles for maybe a Matty Cash, or dropping Trippier down to Lascelles, or bringing Archer in for Alvarez this week. So I'm very undecided. And I might just, the options there to just roll the transfer. So then I'll get the 2 free transfers to roll after the international break, which I do keep leaning towards, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think if you're happy with a lot of your team, sometimes it might be worth keeping that transfer and letting it roll over to the next week. In my case, my team has a lot of doubtfuls in it, and it's how to deal with that because it's that gamble of when it says they're doubtful, are they going to play or are they not? And it's always the tricky one when it comes to potential Madison replacements because although the injury looked bad, if you look at what the Premier League app says, he's actually quite likely to play. It's just whether you take a gamble of keeping him in and hoping and then seeing what happens. Other replacements I can suggest could be Diego Jota, Jared Bowen, or Martinelli, who I've mentioned earlier. So at the moment, my team isn't fully yet ready because I'm still pondering over who to replace and who to put in. It's still a working progress for me, so I don't have a team update as such, mainly because I'm still working on it to see what happens and see maybe tomorrow's press conference news could be interesting. I mean, putting in Cole Palmer off the bench could be worth it, but I'm not sure how much goals we will score against Man City. It's one of these things where it's one of these games where I don't have faith in getting the right kind of amount, right of points, but anything could happen, so that's an option. So that's kind of brief update on teams. Now, finally, to finish off the show, we will go to in and bin. I've got George's in and bin, which I will update you on, but Matt, let's go for your in and bin selections first.
Okay, mate. So I haven't really given this too much thought, but just to kind of rewind a little bit, just saying about players that are yellow flagged. I've noticed this season 3 managers stand out to me that don't give anything away. Well, four managers. So you've got Pep Guardiola, Mikel Arteta, it's Eddie Howe, and Ange Postecoglou. 4 managers who don't give anything away in their press conferences, and it is very much, I think, if you have players, you have to go with your gut. And in terms of if there's anyone you want to bring in and they're looking like they're going to go up in price, I think a lot of people will say kind of save the transfer, but a lot of people I think would just, if you haven't got the money, like I haven't got anything in the bank. George has got great team value. So he's sitting on a nest egg over there, more like an ostrich egg, but he's doing all right. Whereas, like I said, I haven't got anything in the bank. So if a player goes up in price, I've got to transfer someone out to get some money, and it's got to work that way. Um, so that's the only thing I'd give there, just a tip on the managers. If you want someone, I just think trust your gut and go with them. Plus, also go with what they're usually like, such as Saka, who is pretty much nailed on to start. The in. So there's the in for me. The in has to be Saka. Um, just purely because, like I just said, he's nailed on. He's going to start. I think it's down as a knock. So, and he does. He gets kicked all the time. I think he'll be fine. And I think he'll be involved in the goals and assists. In terms of a bin, I'm not going to say Matt Turner because he lost his place last week. He was my pick for last week. And the Forest keeper that came in, I cannot pronounce his name. So if anybody can, amazing. I can't. But I thought he played a good game. The bin. The bin, the only one that I cannot think of anybody for the bin this week. So the only option that's screaming out at me at the moment would be Luca Dina. Purely because Moreno is back. I think he'll be brought back into the team possibly this week. If he's not starting, he'll come off the bench this week. So those are mine. What about yourself, mate? What are you thinking?
So, bin wise, like you say, it's hard one really. I'm struggling to pick one because it's that kind of curse of you've been a player and you watch they'll probably score you quite a bit of points. And it's whether you've been a player who's got that little flag next to them, whether you bin them because you don't know how long they'll play. So, do you bin Madison after what happened? I mean, obviously you're going to have to take out players like Udogi, who's obviously been sent off, and the other player who's been sent off. So,
You've
bin
got Ben Romero there, haven't you? Like you said, in terms
Romero,
of
got him. You
yeah,
have
he's going to be out for 3 games. I mean, 3 months, but yeah,
three games is a lot in fantasy. That there's
yeah,
a point you could make up there depending on who you bring in. So you have to bin your players. Don't let them sit there just because it's 3 games, because that's a dangerous approach you can take when say, oh, it's only 3 games, they'll come back. They will, but in them 3 games, let's say you could. I mean, it's it's unlikely, but let's say you bring in a defender for Romero who can then potentially get you the most 3 clean sheets. So you can lose quite a lot of points if you keep these players. So there's 2 defenders there that you need to get rid of. And Madison, well, it's your call. Do you want to keep him? Do you want to see if he plays? I'd say take him out because to me did not sound great, but we could be proven wrong. Um, as my in, it's got to be Martinelli for me. Um, I think him and Saka are, like I said, it's one of these things where I'd encourage breaking my rule of 2 players from the same team in one position because of the points you can get. I think it would be quite a good idea. So I'm going to give you George's bin first. George's bin was Marcus Rashford. What do you think?
After I put the entire Man United team, let's just scrap that out. I put the entire squad in the bin last week, so I think you've got to go with it. You've got to go with it. Just anyone you could pick. But yeah, Marcus Rashford. Guess who he got sent off last night, was it? Or the night
Yep,
before?
yep. He got sent off last night in that thriller against Copenhagen.
Yeah, yep. So I think Rashford's got to be one to go. So good shout from George to go. He just continues to drop in value, and that's just the point I'd say about following on from Romero. If anyone's got him in their team, he's going to be out for 3 games. So in that time, he's probably going to drop 0.1 as well. So it's worth it to get him out your team to protect your team value as well.
Yeah, and you never know if he drops in value and then comes back and starts playing well again. Could be good to bring in. And George's in was the same as mine. It was Gabriel Martinelli for in. So there we go. I think that's quite a popular pick, Martinelli for the week. So yeah,
But who was your bin though, mate? Who did you pick to go in the bin?
I,
I wasn't going to let you go without putting someone in the bin. Come on.
this is hard. Ooh. I'm struggling because I don't want to pick an injured player because I think that's a cheap cop out to put.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
oh, put an injured player in the bin. But the thing is, most of my team haven't done that badly, and kind of what I usually base my bin on is kind of which player in my team has done badly 3 weeks in a row, and then I kind of take that to then decide um, what to do with them. But to be honest, with Matty Cash, I mean, I know he's got a knock, but we don't know what's going to happen. But to me, I've bought him in a few weeks ago thinking that could actually be quite useful. And the few weeks he did play, last week he didn't play, fair enough, but the few weeks he did play for me, he was a bit of a letdown. So I have to say, regardless of whether he plays or not, I got disappointed with Matty Cash, and I'd personally put him in the bin.
That's my gasp. So he did play last week, but he came off because he had a shoulder injury. So I was dubious as to how long that would last, if it was severe or. It's
Hmm.
obviously the same thing with Andy Robertson, but Andy Robertson had to have surgery. So,
Just in general, he's not gotten me as many points as I'd hoped. I thought it was going to be a very good investment because he can assist, or Villa might get a clean sheet, especially against Luton. I bought him in against West Ham, to be honest, and it's just, I don't know. Even if he was to play and was to be fine, I'm not so convinced whether I'd have that much faith in him at the moment since he's let me down for a few weeks. So if I was desperately going to pick a bin and I'm struggling, I'd go for Matty Cash for me. So
okay,
yeah,
mate. That's a yeah.
Matty Cash bin, Gabriel Martinelli in, and there we go. So who are your in and bins? Put them in the comments. Let us know. We are very much interested as always. So there we go. We have finished the show. It's a bit of a odd one.
Oh no, we haven't. Not yet. We're not going just yet.
We have a
No.
full.
Oh, I've got an idea, mate. I've got something was just popping off in my head. So
Here we go. Here we go. I
when
like
these
that.
light bulb moments happen, we've got to run with them. um,
Hit me
so
with it.
I have an idea. I'm just thinking, right? Maybe it's a little new segment we just throw into the show. It can be just a quick fire.
Love a
So a
surprise.
watch list. So I'm thinking, do you have someone that potentially is in your head who you're thinking, yep, he could come in my team. Maybe not now, but maybe in a few game weeks. So is anybody in your mind who you think would be interested in you in a few game weeks time?
Depends what we mean by a few game weeks. How many are we talking?
So maybe someone after the international break, maybe yeah, sort of like 3 to 4 game weeks time. Anybody who's possibly in your thinking? Because I could tell you mine, but I'm curious to see.
Let's hear yours.
Okay, so for me, as I've said about Haaland's an option more longer term, more that sort of game week 16. So for now, I'm thinking that Christopher Nkunku. Now he's coming back into Chelsea training. He is on the FPL site, is coming back November 25th, so after the international break. And he had amazing pre-season before he got injured. So he's done it in the Bundesliga. No doubt, like similar like Diaby, I think he's come into the Premier League and done amazing. I think Nkunku would do the same. So if I stick with my team as it is, the only changes I'll make to it is bringing Chelsea players in because from game week 15, I think, possibly 16, it's amazing all the way up to game week 21. So Nkunku could be that option for me. So he's someone to watch. So just wondering if you had someone in mind.
In Kunku's there's two. There's one really soon, and there's one quite far away, but I'd keep a watch. So I'll tell you the first one is Nkunku, because as soon as I heard that I think it was a few weeks ago, Pochettino mentioned that he'll be back after the international break, I thought, yep, he is the one. He is the one I want to bring in because I know for if he plays as well as if he recovers well from this injury, and he plays as well as he did in the preseason, boy, he will be interesting. There will be points. one player I'd say watch, but watch with a very long distance eye. And I tell you for why, because I'm thinking this is going to be something to watch for in January. So it's a massive forward, but you keep in mind where Ivan Toney goes once his ban is lifted. Because depending where he goes, if he goes anywhere, you might want to bring him back in.
Goals, goals, goals with him, isn't it? So
Well, you'd hope
doesn't
so.
matter. He score.
You hope so. You hope that he's the ban he's had has not affected him too much in terms of goal scoring form. But we're getting, it's only November, yes, so we still got a while, we still got a few game weeks, but you keep an eye on that player.
See, this is why I was thinking of the segment watch list, someone to watch. So good shout.
It's a
Good
long
shout.
distance watch list, but I'd say put him there, maybe far down the watch list. I'd say.
Again, that is someone that George and I have talked about. So yeah, good shout, mate.
So there we go. That is a new feature. We're gonna carry on. I like that feature. We're gonna carry on next week. That's an executive producer's decision there. So there we go. That's the show. Odd one, but George is back next week, and I believe we're doing an FPL show next week. Kind of review after the game week. Tricky over preview because there's an international break when players could get injured, but we'll look at it and decide for ourselves. But yes, so we're finishing the show. There will be an update one way or another on when our next show is going to be. So look out on our socials. We've got at Golden Goal TV on X. We've got the Facebook group too, and the WhatsApp group. And as for this channel, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're enjoying this video, then also click the bell icon to get notifications whenever we start a stream or upload a new video so you don't miss our content.
It does help with the numbers, people. So yeah, if you can smash that like button, yeah, all good stuff.
And subscribe. We want subscribers because that way
Yeah,
people enjoy content. And if you want to be a contributor, if you want to come on the show and represent your clubs, also get in touch because we would like to have as many club supporters as possible to, give us a bit more views. At the moment, we can easily talk Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, United. That's all good, but we want other clubs to be reflected. Your Burnleys, your Bournemouths, your Brentfords, Brightons, and all the others in between. We want to have as wide of a view as possible. So if you are interested, drop us a message and we would be glad to consider you as a contributor, whether it's on the FPL shows or whether it's on the Premier League preview or review shows. So all that aside, we want to thank you for watching on demand or live, and we will be back with you very soon. So thank you, Matt. Thank you for coming on. George, we couldn't play our contributions due to good old technical issues, but we still included them in a way that we could. So hope you've enjoyed your midweek of football action. Eh? Good win for Arsenal yesterday in the Champions League, and I'm not sure what Arsenal's result in the League Cup was in the women's, but hopefully it was a good one. So
they won. They won.
they won. Well,
Yep.
even better then. So yeah, fair play, and all of you enjoy this weekend of Premier League action before we go to the good old international break.
Definitely. Good luck, people. Hope everyone has a much better game week than last week. So let's hope in for some high scores.
Absolutely much higher than last week. I mean, that was a shocker. The average was 32 points, people. It's bad when it's